Let's see what we got tonight. I'm not going to say that. Obviously, he ain't pulled his finger yet, but we're still good. There's a TV show on there. Most of you probably have seen it. It's called What Would You Do? And I guess if I had to name this lesson, I'll call it a lesson because I'm not a preacher. I guess I would call it What Would You Do? I may change that up toward the end to another question, but I'll save that for the end. In case you're not familiar with the show, it's kind of based on a runoff maybe of Candid Camera, but it's not so much the funny side of it. They have different scenarios. They set up hidden cameras, and a lot of times it's in restaurants or whatever, and they've got actors in there. They portraying different things, and they want to try to get the reaction of the other patrons of the restaurant or the store or wherever they're at. They can set up some crazy things. It just makes you want to. Brother Chris is talking about sometimes feel like you get hit in the belly, but you may sometimes you want to just ball up your fist and hit somebody. But they got some pretty cool scenarios they set up. I know one, they set up a car outside. It wasn't a real baby in there, so don't get excited. But the temperature was real hot, and they had a recording of a baby crying, and it was wrapped up. You couldn't really see in the car seat. And of course, the parent wasn't there, had left the baby, and had different people walking by. They would hear the baby crying, and when the mom, or they reversed the roles later and brought the dad out. They would just lay into them. You shouldn't be doing this, and it's kind of mind opening to see some of the reaction of the people that wouldn't do anything. And I know one that had a little girl in a shopping center. Her and her mom was shopping for clothes, and the little girl, she was one of the actors. Now I'm just bringing you what they brought. She was a spoiled brat, basically. She wanted this, she wanted that. This wasn't good enough, and back talking to salespeople and just fussing at them, and and it showed some of the other ladies that was shopping there how they would come up, and one actually talked to the little girl. One maybe would talk to the sales lady and say, "I wouldn't be putting up with this. You should tell them people they need to go somewhere else." And I think some of them talked to the mom. Of course, the mom was one of the actors too, and she would tell them, that's none of their business. But which brings me, my basic question: what would you do in some of these situations? There was one situation in the Bible, the rich young ruler. Most of you know that story. He come up to Jesus. He's wanting to know what he had to do to be saved. And Jesus says, well, keep all the commandments. And he went through all the commandments, and the young ruler, he says, I've done all these things. Well, Jesus said, well, then you need to sell everything you have and come and follow me. Oh, what would you do? You've got all these riches that you've worked hard for. You've earned these things. I know some of us have a job, and I'll just pick it on you guys. Some of us have, but we work for what we've got, What would you do if Jesus actually come up and said, I need you to sell all that and come and follow me, go off possibly to another land, another country, and speak my word? You don't have to answer me, but think about it. What would you do? The world is a lot like this. They're not willing to give up the things they have to be able to lift God up and to serve Him. Our government officials, oh my goodness, that's 10 sermons in one right there. Most of them are unwilling to give up the power they have, the money they make, to be able to lift God up and to do His will. They have to be politically correct, as we hear it say. I was watching a thing on TV the other night. It was a thing about government control, and it was a documentary. And of course, you see their side of whoever is making the documentary, But it was talking about how they had opened up some of the old bunkers from back in the old wars. They were revamping them. And there has been actually people, these doomsday preppers, as we hear them talk about, that have bought some of these old properties from the government. They've transformed them into their little bunkers. And I didn't know it. You could actually buy into these for anywhere from $5,000 to $12,000 and be part of this group of people. And they're going to go in there and set up everything, have the food in there and all you got to do is be able to get there. Well, who's making some money off of this thing? The government is keeping track of all these. They know who's buying these food. They know where the food's hoarded up at. So if you go buy any, don't use your credit card, because if you do any kind of amount, I'm not saying don't go build up a food supply, because I feel like one day it's coming that there's not going to be a grocery store to run down the road to, or the BP at the corner up here to run down and pick up a pack of bread, a loaf of bread or anything. So I'm not saying it's not wrong to build up a little supply there. But when it all comes down to it, God's in control. You may not be around the area to be able to get to your food. So, we have to trust Him in whatever preparations we're doing. But the preparation we'll need to make is to make sure you know Him in your heart. And when He does come to call us home, that you are one to go with Him. I was thinking about the government, and I had a question. Could Jesus run for a public office today? Sure, He could run, but do you think he would actually get voted in? As senator, representative, president? Probably not. I think he's probably not politically correct enough to be able to do that. I got a little section in my Bible here. It's asking, what should a leader look like? But it talks about the presidents and prime ministers. They work hard to convey this perfect image, of confidence, power, and all this. They actually hire people to put on this presentation of being in power and to look a certain way. Matthew depicts Jesus as a true leader, a king, in fact. But he's one who broke the stereotypes. That's the kind of leader I think we need today. Jesus had undeniable power. He could be quite angry. Let me read this again. He could quiet an angry storm. There we go. And even walk on the surface of the water that He just calmed. Yet He used His power compassionately for the sake of others, to feed the hungry and heal the sick. He wasn't concerned about a powerful image. He was about God's work. He wasn't about what the world wants him. All throughout the Bible, there's been a lot of people that, I guess when it came down to it, was not directly asked the question, what would you do? But was put in situations where they had to make a decision on what would they do. And many great leaders of the Bible have failed that question. And what would they do? The rich young ruler that I just talked about, he failed that question. What would you do? He walked away. What about Peter? Oh, Peter, he was all the time getting in trouble with Jesus. Jesus rebuked him several times. But when Jesus was carrying the cross, Peter denied Him 3 times. Denied even knowing Him. I know not the man, I believe he said. He even came to the point he was cursing when people asked him and saying, I do not know the man. The Israelites as a whole, as a country, the golden calf they made, they failed their very first attempt under the new covenant with God. They failed the very first thing. And this was God's chosen people. What about Judas? Judas really failed. How many times have we failed in our life? You don't have to answer me. How many times have you been put into a situation? Not to the point, I believe Judas could have been saved. He could have turned around and said, Jesus, please forgive me for what I've done. And I believe he would have forgave him. But no, he let the enemy get the best of him and went and hung himself. He failed the test. The Israelites, they've been in and out of rebuke from God many, many, many times throughout the Old Testament. You can read it. How many times have we failed what we've done? How many, many, many times? As I read at the beginning, Jesus requested laborers. So I want to change the questions of what would you do to what will you do. From here on out, what will you do? I want to read those verses again right quick, because they may have a little bit different meaning now. I'll start with verse 36 if you want to follow along again. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted and were scattered abroad, as sheep having no shepherd. Then he said unto his disciples, the harvest is truly plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers unto the harvest. Are you going to step up and be one of his laborers? That's what he wants you to do. I'm not saying you're saved or not saved. That's another issue, but that is a main issue. But if you are saved, are you going to be one of his laborers? Amen. Several of us took a trip up to Valdez here a couple weekends ago, and it was very eye-opening, some of the things I heard about. There was a group of people called the Waldensians, and I believe they were in Italy, if I'm not mistaken, and they were surrounded by unbelievers, but they had determined, I'm going to try to keep this short, we spent the whole day there, or the afternoon, but they were determined to get out the Word of God. They built their own college up in the hills, and they have a replica of it built over here, and it is very amazing the defense system they had, just so they could go there and study. Do you realize they memorized the Bible? They memorized the Bible. We can't even read the Bible every night, and they memorized the Bible. And they, upon graduating from the college, they would go out to spread the word, knowing, this is statistics, their life expectancy beyond that point was maximum of 2 years, because they would get caught and tortured and crucified, not necessarily crucified, but tortured and put to death. But some of the ways that they put them to death was just kind of terrible. I won't even go into that right now. It's probably stuff that most of us wouldn't even want to imagine anybody going through what they put those Christians through. But they were very determined people, no matter what was the cost. They wanted to spread God's word. And they eventually moved over to the United States and settled in what is now known as Valdez. And it's a very eye-opening situation up there. But as far as laborers, once you decide, yes, I'm going to go out and spread the word, which is what I was talking about, it's kind of amazing, some of the things that were said here tonight. We all know we need to go out and spread his word. That is Jesus' request to us as a Christian. The parable of the sower in Matthew 13, 3 through 9. It talks about, even though they plant many of the seeds are going to fall to the wayside. So don't get discouraged if everybody you talk to is not going to come to know the Lord. Right. Because there's going to be many that won't. Many is going to make fun of you and tell you how silly this sounds. Don't be discouraged. Keep on going, because there's one out there that will grow. Amen. I want to close in over at James chapter 2 and verse 17. If you want to turn over, you can. If not, I know most of us say we want to have the faith. You got to have that faith to be able to go out and do these things. But James chapter 2 and 17, this is another one. If you have faith, all right, even so faith, if it hath not works, is dead, being alone. So if you have faith, if you say you have faith in Jesus, go out and do something. Amen. Go out and do something. Well, I know that's been short. Y'all have already had this on Sunday morning. But if you need to come and talk to the Lord, I want to open up the altar. If my brother there's got any kind of music ready or kind of closing music or anything. If not, Carrie will sing. Huh? But if you need to come and talk to the Lord, maybe rededicate your life and talk to the Lord about going out and be one of his laborers. Ask him to lead you, guide you to where you want to be, to where he wants you to be. All right.